Every single time that I go into prayer with God, that I step into his presence, I am bringing a really big bag of mixed motives. Okay? That's just true. And so as you bring that big bag of motives, as I bring this really big bag of motives, I bring it to God, and it's in that time that I'm going to be sifting through to the right ones. That's part of why this whole thing is happening. It's part of the reason that I'm engaging with God in this. And so when you're there and you're thinking, I don't have the right heart for this, just get into it. You just need to have that time with God. Step into it, because it's through the process of actually spending that time with him that the motives are sifted through. Here's the other thing he says. He said that you will be rewarded. There's a reward for spending time with God. There's a reward for it. And the rewards, there's many, but two of them I'll just say right off the bat. The first one is that you have access to God. You have access to God. Now, here's the problem, is that many of us who have been around the church for so many years, and if you grew up in the church as I did, then what I learned is that I have access to God. But, truly, by the time I could be old enough and mature enough to really understand and think about my relationship with God and how I experience being in his presence, that part of it, that access to God, became something that didn't even seem like the privilege that it is. And so I didn't see it as a privilege. I didn't understand it as a privilege. Jesus is letting us know you have access to God. Why is that important? Because the people that he was speaking to did not have that access. None of them did. There was only one person who had access to God. It was the high priest. He would go into the temple, into the Holy of Holies. He would have offered sacrifices before he goes in. He would have confessed everything he has ever thought, ever did, since he was a little boy, in hopes that when he went in, he did not die in front of God. They literally had a rope that they tied around his waist, because if he died, nobody else was going in to get him. They would drag his body out with a rope. That's what access to God meant. Who's wanting that? Anybody signing up for that one? So when Jesus said you have access to God, believe me, this was earth-shattering news. This was front page headlines. The crowd is talking to one another. There's chatter going on. So there's access to God. We're rewarded with access to God, and we're rewarded with answered prayer. Absolutely. Then Jesus goes on and he says, when you pray. Now, again, we hear this and we think, oh, I know what that is. And we don't. I'll say I haven't. And I have to remind myself of what this actually is. When you look at the context of the Middle East and what Jesus is bringing into this picture, what he's bringing is a picture of someone coming into a king. When you came into a king, you would come in face on the ground. My face would be buried on the floor, and I would only look at the king, and I would only address the king when he gave me permission. It didn't matter how many days I was on the floor. Until he gave me permission, I didn't get to. I didn't get to look at him. That's the honor that they gave to the king. This is the context that Jesus is bringing. And he didn't say that was wrong. He just brings another truth to bear here. But what we need to understand here is that what prayer really is it's an audience with the creator of the universe. The one who gave you life, the one who breathed into me and made me alive. You and I have an audience with him. Talk about a privilege. That's something that hardly anyone ever got, and yet Jesus said, it's yours. That's what the kingdom of God is all about. This is the experience that you get to have every single day, 24 hours a day. This is what he is opening up for you. I need you to get this. This is a privilege beyond all privileges, that you would have that kind of an access. And Jesus says, when you pray, when you have this audience with God, our response honestly should be, you mean I get one? Because I didn't think that would ever happen for me. And Jesus says, absolutely, you get one.